We need to bring you in and remove your bladder. And if you don't, you won't live another 3 months. You're a photographer, have a look at the screen. I was like, I can't look at that.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Right, everybody in this room is uniquely beautiful.
Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Black Women Rising podcast, sponsored by the wonderful Palmers. Today's special guest, I am so excited and just gassed to have him on. Not only is he one of my really, really good friends, but he's a celebrity in his own right. His bio is absolutely insane, and I'm only going to read out a snippet of it, right? But we have in the house Simon Frederick, who is an award-winning director, artist, photographer, filmmaker and broadcaster, and he was diagnosed with bladder cancer, and it's just such an honour to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
I hope I can live up to the billing.
Listen, honestly, we talk all the time, and I'm just so grateful that we met. Like, when was that? That was like Denise, isn't it? Denise Lewis.
That's right.
I saw your journey, and I think for me, when I first saw your journey, it had gone viral. You'd put up a post, right, about your diagnosis, and it went viral. And I think the first thing that stood out to me at the time of where I was, so I was a few years in the clear after my own diagnosis, was lovely to see a high-profile black man speak about cancer so open and freely, but also the way you wrote it was with so much love and so much care and advice for others as well. And I think that really stood out to me. So for me, I was on my journey with Black Women Rising only just a tiny little bit, and it was just so beautiful to see. And then obviously Denise Lewis connected us through the Stephen Lawrence Foundation when you were making that wonderful film. Yeah. And I remember coming on your set and being part of your beautiful vision and magic. And I just remember coming up the stairs and all these celebrities were coming up, and I was like, what the hell am I doing here, you know? But you were so warm and welcoming, and we just had that instant connection about the cancer, and you were so giving and just free with your experience and stuff. And I remember leaving feeling so inspired and like, one day I hope I get to work with this man. And I mean, we've done so many things and we're here. But let's take it back, Simon, because you have done so many things in your life. I was doing a bit of research for this podcast, and there's stuff that you haven't even told me in our many conversations that you've done, places you've lived, the incredible work that spanned across all of these different fields that you've done. Can we talk a bit about all your work, first and foremost? The cancer diagnosis we'll talk about in a minute, even though it's a cancer-related podcast, but I want to know about you and all the amazing things that you've done and how you got into this profession.
When I start talking about all the things I've done, people start working out that I'm really not as young as I look. So it kind of gives it away. But yeah, I've done a lot. I've been around a long time. Yeah.
And a career spanning how long? How many decades?
Well, let's just say that I'll tell you a funny story. I think that I finished art college in the late 80s. And I remember getting my first job at I couldn't believe these guys were going to give me a job. It was this really fancy graphic design studio that was in Mayfair. Yeah. And I remember going in to work on the Monday morning, and the art director was really excited to see me. And he sat me down at my desk, sat me down at my station, showed me this beautiful, iMac sitting on the desk. Wow. And I looked at it, and he was like, look, we're just going to start you off really easy this week. We're not going to do much. Put the work down. And he's like, just take your time, and we'll see you at lunchtime. And I sat there looking at this square box on my desk, thinking, what the hell is this? Because 3 years at art college, learning graphic design, we didn't once learn anything on a computer. Wow. So I didn't even know how to switch the bloody thing on. So after about an hour looking at that and staring at it, I got up and I left. And I never went back.
Oh my God, you never actually went back to the job, though.
I never went back, yeah.
Oh my God.
So that was years then working in magazines, selling advertising space.
Yeah.
working at Time Out for a long time. I worked at Time Out for a hell of a long time.
Wow.
And then I got headhunted by Elle magazine, went there, and then ended up, that was where my love of photography began, because I spent more time in the, photographer's department than spending time in marketing or in sales.
Yeah.
Just I was fascinated by photographers and photography. I loved going to the fashion shoots and seeing them, do what they did. And they just seemed like these really cool, sophisticated guys, that seemed a bit like demigods. They were always cool. Yeah. Everybody flocked around them.
Yeah, of course.
And then they made these wonderful images. I fell in love with that. But I didn't take that up until many, many years later. I think I was about, people are going to go, how old is this guy? I think I was about 34, 35 when I picked up a camera again. And I hadn't picked up a camera before that. Probably I was 15. Gosh. So I remember just going around the place with a little camera, little thing like that. Wow. And taking pictures. And it was some friends of mine. They were in a band called Damage back in the day.
Oh my God, Damage! Yeah. You're taking it back.
I'm taking it back. And they've reformed, but they were having their last ever gig at the Jazz Cafe. Yeah. And I went and took some pictures. And by then I was working at a small ad agency that I was running. And I remember, one of the managers, they had two managers, one of the managers called me up and said, look, you were taking pictures, we didn't have a photographer there, could you send us the pictures? So I just sent them pictures, didn't think anything of it. And that picture started my career. It was a picture of Jay from Damage, and they printed it as a half page in the independent newspaper.
What?
So that was the first picture that I ever had kind of published. Yeah. And then a few weeks after that, I had a very strange incident where the picture editor of the Independent rang me up and was trying to get me to go and be their photographer, photographing Erykah Badu's concert. What? Now I'm like,
hell yeah,
girlfriend, I'm not a photographer. Yeah. So probably about 40 minutes later, and the offer of £1,000, I said, well, what harm can I do? Yeah. So I went, walked into the pit, and basically anyone who's ever been a photographer back in the day, when photography of concerts was a thing, before
all that
phones took over.
All of that, yeah.
Well, I walked into the pit and my pass was about that big and it said photographer on it.
Oh my God.
But there were 3 photographers in that pit who I had hired at a certain stage, and they looked at me like, what are you doing here?
What are you doing here? Yeah.
And where's your equipment? And I think it was out of fear. Every shot I took was a gem. And that's what started my career as a music photographer back in the day.
Mad. You've done so much stuff.
I have. So went around the world photographing with lots of different bands. I mean, I photographed everyone from, you name them, from U2 to Lenny Kravitz to, I mean, literally, it's hard for me to say because I think I've photographed virtually everyone as a music photographer. Been on tours with different bands, etc., etc. Gosh. But I was in Portugal photographing a Lenny Kravitz concert, and in England I couldn't get at the time, this was the early 2000s, I couldn't get an agent to take me on. I could bring in bags of money, put it on their desk, and they weren't going to hire me. And I did some research and I found out that literally in the top 100 agencies at the time, in the early 2000s, there was one photographer that had an agent, and that was, one black photographer
Yeah, I was going to
that had
say,
an agent.
yeah.
Yeah. And he was Koto Blofo, who's still around today doing great work. And the rest of us, you know, anyone who had you know, I had a beautiful portfolio, but my thing was photographing models of color. And that wasn't
wasn't there.
that wasn't the thing in this country. But when I went to Portugal, it was a thing. And literally within a week, so going back, I went to Portugal. Before I went to Portugal, I knew maybe 3 months before I was going to go to Portugal on this tour. So I made a portfolio. And in that portfolio, I you know, set it out for advertising and a little bit of fashion. But I made appointments with all of the top creative directors of all of the top advertising agencies. And they have all of the same advertising agencies that we have in London. If you have a car account or a big multinational account, as a brand, you have to have, you know, your ad agency, you know, in the local market, looking after the local language. So I knew that. I went over. All of the creative directors that I set out to see saw me.
Wow.
Not only did they see me, unlike those who I made appointments to see me in England, who sent the intern to see me in the reception, they saw me and they brought their entire teams.
Wow.
Yeah. So a week later, I remember this, a guy called Pedro Ferreira from Young and Rubicam, creative director there, who is a great friend of mine now. He said to me, never forget, he said, I think I have a job for you. And I was like, yeah, right. You know, I went about my business. And he called me a week later. And he hired me to do a really big job making portraits of up-and-coming stars in Portugal for Portugal's National Bank. Wow. And then my next campaign after that was shooting a campaign for a huge European campaign for IKEA. What? And then the next one after that was shooting a campaign from BMW. So I moved to Portugal.
So that's how you ended, because I've obviously known that you lived in Portugal. So that's how you ended up.
Yeah, I moved in Portugal, built a huge studio.
Yeah.
Had a team of 12. Yeah, we did incredible work over a period of about 10 years. So I actually lived in Portugal for 14 years. Yeah.
But you used to do presenting on the TV, didn't you?
How did you know that?
Because you've told me. And you know what? That's just mad, because that's what I was saying. You're so multifaceted. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there was this show on in Portugal, and they asked me to come on and be myself. So I was Simon the photographer. So I ended up doing that, and then ended up working for Benfica, the football club, Benfica TV. So basically, it's like I wish you could patent this, because all of the photographs that you see of the footballers now in the Premier League, you see the photos of them, you see them walking walking on.
Yeah.
Basically, I think we started that with Benfica Television back in 2004, 2005. So it's like,
paving the way.
As always.
Yeah, as always.
Yeah.
But this is only half of the things you do, and I will get into that. But in terms of you coming back from Portugal and coming back to the UK, we know that you do a lot of work overseas as well, which we'd like to talk to you about as well. But talk a bit about your cancer diagnosis and a bit about when you started to feel symptoms.
Okay. So I started to feel symptoms probably about 2016. Yeah. And, you know, this is going to sound harsh for people, but, you know, we're talking about cancer.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't matter.
I remember going to the toilet and peeing, and it was like I was peeing red wine. And I was thinking, when's the last time I drank red wine? And I just thought it was weird. And then thought, okay, let me see if it happens again. And it didn't. A few days later, it happened again. And I was like, right, okay, this is not right. And I remember I had a meeting to go to in Paddington.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. I always say that certain things happen, and I put it down to the ancestors, because it's the only thing that I can do. It's like somebody's probably telling me or whispering something in my ear, or there's another voice that doesn't belong to mine in my head, and it's talking to me, it's telling me what to do. But I was in Paddington and finished the meeting, and yeah, the voice in my head said to me, go to St. Mary's Hospital and go to A&E and tell them what's going on. So I did. I went to A&E and they were brilliant. They did some checks and then told me to come back the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, literally the next day. They weren't messing.
Yeah.
And went back the next day, and I went to see, I remember saw Dr. Vale. And little did I know, because how would I have known, that Dr. Vale is probably one of the most preeminent professors in this country on bladder cancer. Like he is, you can't get better.
No.
Yeah. And he was like, right, okay, you're going to come in next week and we're going to basically stick a camera into your penis and have a look. And I was like, you're going to what?
Yeah, of course.
And he's like, don't worry about it. You're a big, strong lad. You'll be fine, as Dr. Vale does. Yeah. And so I remember coming back the next week with my partner at the time, who's now my wife.
Yeah, who's now your wife.
Yeah. And her sitting on the other side of the curtain, sitting on the other side, and then her talking to the doctor, who also became a really good friend, part of Dr. Vale's team, Sam. And Sam couldn't believe how old we were. Yeah. We
were talking about this in
the
last podcast. Yeah.
He couldn't believe it because I was telling him that, you know, like my oldest daughter and Natalie's oldest son at the time was the same age as his girlfriend, and he couldn't believe it because he thought that we were the same age as him.
Yeah.
And then all that was going on, and apparently all Natalie could see was this nurse who was on the other side of the curtain, see her feet, and there was just like, it was like a Carry On movie because she was trying to put the thing, and I wasn't letting her and struggling and all this kind of stuff. So eventually they got the camera inside of me, and I remember Sam saying to me, you're a photographer, have a look at the screen. I was like, I can't look at that.
Yeah.
But then when I did look, I could see it. There it was, this lump, this pink ball that was inside of my bladder. But it didn't come as a surprise to me. I walked into that room and I knew that I had bladder cancer.
Were you in any pain?
I used to have, if I retained my urine in my bladder, I'd feel a lot of burning sensation.
Yeah.
And if I passed urine, it would burn. Yeah. But that was the only pain that I had. But the clue to it is, it's not normal for you to pee blood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Because that's all, to be honest, those symptoms of what you've said is consistent with having maybe cystitis or a urine infection or something like that, which is very, very common.
Yeah.
So a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think that, but you straight away used that initiative, like you said, and you were like, no, I'm going to go and get this checked out.
Yeah, and it was good because basically where I lived at the time, I think if I'd gone to my GP, I'd probably be dead now.
Yeah.
That's straight up facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are so many things that I look back upon and I just think, if this had happened, I wouldn't be here.
Like what?
Good question.
You've told me this before, though. You've told me a few things before, actually, about this.
If I was married to my first wife, I'd be dead. Sorry,
that just makes me laugh.
Sorry to say that. No. It sounds harsh. But I think that if I got ill, she just wouldn't have stuck around to. Yeah. That wasn't her thing to nurse anybody.
Yeah.
You know, that would have been a burden to her. If I was living on my own and decided that I was going to ignore it, I'd be dead.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, it was, so we had, you know, 2016, 2017, going in and out of hospital every few months for them to go in, do microsurgery, cut out the cancer, which wasn't good for me, because basically it was like my urinary tract would become inflamed, which meant that I couldn't pee, which meant that I had to wear a catheter.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like I made 2 films wearing a catheter, and my whole team not knowing. Actually, tell a lie. Second film I made, when I made They've Gotta Have Us.
Yeah.
I flew to New York with a catheter, didn't get stopped at the airport, walked through security, just made sure it was empty beforehand.
I love it.
And yeah, got on the plane, got to New York, and then I remember my head of production at the time, Tracy, didn't tell me that we were going to walk, because normally, like, you arrived.
Of course.
You know, I'm used to now in my career.
Yeah.
You know, you arrive somewhere, you get, you know, they send a car.
Absolutely.
From the you know, from the hotel to go to the studio, and she was like, "No, we're walking up Fifth Avenue. It's a nice day." It's like, what? And I remember having this catheter, not really strapping it up properly, because I didn't.
Of course.
So I remember having to speak to my DOP, Damien Daniels, and all the team was walking ahead of us, and I was like, "Damien, look, this is what's going on, and I'm going to need to go to a pharmacy to buy tape and all this kind of stuff." And it was painful, because Sing was like falling down my trouser leg, it's pulling, it's you know, it's like I could see the crew going,
"Oh no!"
And yeah, got to, so I mean, basically, it's like it was painful, it was hard.
Of course it was.
But I knew that I couldn't tell the rest of the crew; they would have fallen apart. I couldn't tell the BBC, because they would have pulled the show.
Yeah.
And you know, we had such a long shooting window. I knew that if I'd fallen down, if I got sick, if I didn't finish the show, that, you know, my entire team would have lost that revenue.
Of course.
You know, for the months that they were working on this show, and I couldn't do that to them. That wasn't their fault. So
you put everyone else before yourself.
Yeah.
Even though you was diagnosed with.
Yeah, I remember we did New York. And there's some funny stories in New York. I mean, there's like, you know, just Whoopi Goldberg coming on set and giving me a really big hug. And, you know, and me just thinking, wow, this is why I'm going through this pain. I tell you, when we finished the last day of filming in London, last day of filming, called everyone in, the whole team, and I told them then. And like the tears and the surprise, because how do you tell people that you've got cancer?
Yeah.
Exactly. We tell people you've got cancer, there's one thing that they think.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, they think you're telling them that you're about to die. That you are dying.
You're dying.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to take that back. When you tell people that you've got cancer, they think you're already dead.
Yeah, I was going to say death. Yeah. Cancer, death. Yeah.
So it's a painful thing to tell people. I remember like you know, making They've Gotta Have Us, I wasn't having a good time working with the BBC. Art was imitating life. You know, we made a film about the tribulations of black artists in the art form of film. And everything that we were making the film about was happening to us and happening to me in making that film. So it was a real fight to make that film. But I'm really proud of it because it shows a moment. But I remember during the making of it, my wife saying to me, "You're a documentarian. Why are you not documenting your cancer journey?" And I said to her, "I can't." And she said, "No, you must." And I said, "I can't." She goes, "Just think about all of the people that are going to benefit from this." And I said that, and I just refused to do it. And she was annoyed with me about it, but I refused to do it. And I was asked recently why I refused. I refused because I felt like if I documented it, it was me saying goodbye. Yeah, and I wasn't ready to say goodbye, as you can see.
Of course,
Yeah.
you're here. And well, can I ask you a few questions, right? First and foremost, do you still wear your catheter?
So I actually have an ostomy bag. It's right here.
Yeah.
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 So that's what I wear
Yeah.
every day. I've researched to hell the type of, so basically my kids call me the Bionic Man. Those of you who are old enough will remember Steve Austin, the Bionic Man. They rebuilt him. So, yeah, too young. So basically it's like I run, jump, skip, do whatever as normal.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. And, it's like no one knows.
Yeah, of course.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, there are a few people that know. Yeah.
I want to talk about the day that you decided to, because one thing I've known about you and I've come to know about you is you're very selfless and you do put everyone before yourself, and I can see that, and I know that everything is always about everybody else and making everyone feel great. Like that's what you're so good at, and bringing out the best in people. That's what you do, and from like production to thing, I've had the pleasure of witnessing you do that, So I've always wanted to know this, but for you to have written that post on your Instagram that went viral the way that it did, hence why I saw it, what made you do that?
Good question. Guilt. And this is not an easy question to answer. Now, I will try and answer it the best way that I can. And why I use the word guilt. Not the guilt that, not documenting it. But Chadwick Boseman had just died of bowel cancer. And I remember seeing a post that he had made and it going viral, people saying that he had anorexia.
It's infuriated me. Yeah.
And I was looking at him and going, I know what you've got.
Yeah.
Because I looked just like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember thinking the same thing as well. Yeah.
So when Chadwick Boseman died, I remember seeing all of the outpouring of love. Seeing the posts from his partner,
I know.
all of this, but also knowing that he made his last film. He worked through his last film as I had done.
I know.
We were making a film at the same time, and that got me, because seeing his death was like seeing my own. So in that moment, I was like, I need to write a warning. To other people, just not to sit on this, not to ignore it, because especially as black people, in fact not even as black people, as men, we ignore so much.
I know.
So when I made that post, it was incredible, the outpouring, because it wasn't people just writing back going, congratulations, it's like whatever. people were writing me their
I
stories.
know.
You know, this is what happened to my partner. This is what I'm going through at the moment. This is what my parents went through. This is what I think my mother is going through, my father's going through right now, my brother or whatever. I got all of that. But that was one thing. But the surprising thing for me was how many people from my athletics community. You know, there have been people who had died young from cancer.
Yeah.
An athlete called Todd Bennett, another guy, you're going to have to recut this because I need to remember his name and come back to it. Gary Cadogan, who was also a 400-meter hurdler like me, who died, I think, in his early 30s. Yeah. But what surprised me was the amount of ex-athletes that I knew from around the world that actually started to write to me, and they would write to me in a really strange way. Hi, it was really good to hear that you're good and you're going to be fine. But what were your symptoms? The giveaway question.
That is the giveaway question.
Yeah, what were your symptoms? And then they'd ask a second question, which made me realise that they had symptoms.
Yeah.
So I was telling them to go and get checked out straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
But people were even interacting with each other on that post.
Yeah.
Because I obviously by that time we had built up a bit of a community at Black Women Rising, and I saw people even reply back to other people and tag people in, and it was quite conversational on there. You know, it was quite.
It's funny because it was like that post showed me what threads should be.
Yeah, I know, that's a proper thread, right?
Because it was a thread, a proper thread
of information and information share. There was, of course, like, you're an inspiration, you're this, you're that, and I guess testimonies to you as well. You know. And stuff, but that I just remember that being quite a massive thing. But it was just another thing that there wasn't many men sharing the journey.
I remember a couple of things. I remember thinking that it wasn't. I didn't even think about the love that people were showing me. Yeah, it's like I couldn't think about that. It's not that I'm being arrogant or I was oblivious to it. I was more concerned about what people were actually going through, what they were sitting with.
Of course.
I was concerned with their stories. I mean, fundamentally, you know, it's like I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
And, you know, after I had my operation, and I have to give thanks to Dr. Vale and his team, but I remember Dr. Vale, going back slightly, Dr. Vale got very frustrated with me because he knew what the outcome was for me. He knew that the only survival for me was to have radical bladder surgery, as it's called. And I was like, I'm gonna be all right. Don't worry about that. I'm gonna be fine. And I was fine for a while, but then it came back. And then he was like, right, okay, I'm going to introduce it. I'm going to get you a second opinion. And he sent me to meet the surgeon that actually did my operation. And her name is Norma Gibbons. Yeah. And, you know, it's like Norma Gibbons will always be a woman that I am slightly in love with. Yeah. Because she saved my life. Yeah. Yeah. And as I put it, she gave me my life back. Yeah. And I remember, I think that I was in surgery for 18 hours.
Gosh. It's a complicated operation.
It's a very complicated. It's 3 operations in one.
Is that radical bladder surgery, yeah?
Yeah, it's radical bladder surgery. Because they've got to cut part of your intestine. Yeah. They use the intestine as part of the intestine as the outlet that your pee now goes through. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I'm actually talking publicly about this.
What an honour for us, to be honest.
And yeah, it's a really complicated procedure, yeah.
And as we know too well, a lot of these procedures carry so much risk. So
Yeah.
before you even agreeing to do that, because this is what we have a problem with, a lot of people don't want to go. Once they've heard the risk, they're like, no, I don't care, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you sign your life away.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I mean, they put you in an induced coma because they can't have anything moving while they're operating. So that was strange for me when I woke up. When they woke me up. Yeah, because that's what they did. They woke me up.
What? I think one of the things, there's Simon and all that you do for everyone else.
Yeah.
Family man, huge family man, great friend, inspiration to others, all your different roles and this rich experience that you've had. But you and yourself, like, how did you feel, having to go through all of that? I love that you have been open. You've been open with me twice about, wearing what's it called? A stoma bag?
Yeah, ostomy.
Ostoma bag, yeah. And I've got, friends, obviously, that have had different cancers that also wear them and, talk about them. But actually, we have a lot of people, as part of, our charity, who find a lot of shame in that. And you seem so open with it. And
I'll tell you why. I think, so I remember coming home, and I have to tell you this story because it's like, it gives you context as to what was going on in my family, because it's one thing talking about me, but then there's the other thing is how my family members, how they took it.
of course.
Yeah, how it impacted on them. Yeah, because that's the thing, when you've got cancer, it impacts on everyone.
It's everybody.
Yeah. So I remember when I was told that, so let me go back a little bit. So I had an appointment at the hospital. My stepmom, who used to be a senior nurse before she retired, she was like, I'm going to come with you. So I was like, well, I haven't hung out with you for a while, so yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But we're going to be in and out. It's going to be cool. So she came with me. And when I arrived there, Dr. Gibbons wasn't in her room. It was this other woman who I can't remember her name to this day because of what happened next. And she was an oncologist, and she said, oh, Dr. Gibbons is not here. And the reason why Dr. Gibbons wasn't there was Dr. Gibbons couldn't tell me what she had to tell me. You know? So I sat down, and there was the nurse there, the Macmillan nurse, and this woman turned around and said to me, "Look, so here's what's going on. Basically, the histology of your cancer has changed. It's become very aggressive, and if we don't operate, in fact, if we believe that the cancer is encased within your bladder, and your bladder walls are thick enough that it hasn't spread, but we don't know how long that's going to last."
Absolutely, yeah.
So basically, we're saying we need to bring you in and remove your bladder, and if you don't, you won't live another 3 months.
God.
And I was like, I'm sorry,
Wow.
what? And she repeated it, and I looked at my stepmom, who was literally like speechless. And I said, okay, well, what are my options? And she said, those are your options. And I was like, okay, then I have no option. That's what I'm going to have to do. So we then spent, I think, 2 hours next door with my Macmillan nurse, and I asked her every question I could think of.
Good.
And then we left, and we walked down to Hammersmith Tube Station. My stepmom was going west, and I was going east. I found out that she collapsed on the tube on the way home in tears. So by the time she got home, my dad knew, my sisters knew. I believe she called Natalie, my wife, although when I got home, she pretended that she didn't know anything.
Okay. Yeah.
But then when I told her, the noise that she made when I told her, I'd never heard a human being in so much pain before.
What, Natalie?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'd never heard that kind of noise before.
No.
And it was in that moment I was like, there was a moment after that, probably a few hours later, Callan, my stepson, came in with an iPad, and he was showing me these pictures of these young women in bikinis. I can hear the crew laughing. It's not that kind of thing. But why he was showing me that was there were young women who have Crohn's disease, who have to have the same kind of surgery.
Yeah.
Where they cut the bowel. And,
Yeah.
But they were wearing ostomy bags with covers on, with their bikinis, living their lives. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then we started researching this stuff. And these were young women in their 20s.
Yeah.
And literally, I think I stayed up all night researching this. And then I had some friends of mine, I have to mention them, the Salter brothers.
Okay.
They introduced me to their uncle, and he's a hypnotist, and he had been working with certain football teams that I will not mention, Premier League football teams, just not my own team. And he basically helps players, he hypnotizes them, helps them to basically get their minds mentally strong and their bodies strong for whatever surgeries or whatever injuries that they have to get through them. So I started working with him. And his job, really, as he said, was to get my mind ready for what my body was going to endure, to have my mind ready while I was unconscious to go through what it was going to go through, and then to have the strength to go through it afterwards. And I think that worked for me, whether it was psychosomatic or whatever.
Doesn't matter, yeah.
But I remember the next afternoon after waking up from the surgery, or being woken up by my nurse. And what I mean by that is that when I woke up, when I looked to the bed to the right of me, there was this man in a coma, and his wife and his sister were crying at his bed. And then there was this other man to my left who was also in a coma, and he had his partner there, speaking to him. But each of us in the ICU, we had a nurse at the end of our beds with computer, and like literally I can't imagine now how many lines I had coming out of me.
Course.
I mean, it was ridiculous. But I remember the doctor going to speak to the nurse on the other side and asking how this guy was, and she says, oh, he's fine, I think we're going to wake him up in about 15 minutes. Okay. And not understanding what that meant until he woke up about 20 minutes later, and realizing that they'd done the same to me, that they'd woken me up. But later on in that afternoon, the medicine I was on, it was making me throw up a lot, and having my stomach literally open, it was too painful. So one of the ICU nurses recommended that I came off my pain meds, which was basically an epidural. So I had an epidural in my back. God. So I came off my pain meds probably about 4 or 5 hours after having that operation. And I don't think I could have done that without the...
Yeah, without that hit.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Whew. You've been through a lot. And you've achieved a lot. I mean, I was on Instagram the other day, and I saw some amazing things about some other stuff that you've done, and I want us to talk about that. But what is life like for you now, after everything you've been through?
I'm still on the ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I have the great Oswald Boateng to thank for this. We were at dinner one time, and there was all these amazing people sat at this dinner that was thrown by Edward Ennifold. And he looked at me and he was like, "You've got a hit show on television and you've got an exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery. And look who you're sat next to." I was actually sat next to Dave Chappelle.
What?
And the room was just full of, I mean, it was ridiculous. And I was looking around this room going, what the hell's happened? And he was like, do you know what it's like how does it feel to have made it? And in that moment, I was like, oh, wow. Actually, because we all have this thing, this dream, this ambition.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's like, I want to make it. Okay, but what does that mean? No one actually gives you a manual and goes, right, okay, well, page 99, making it. This is what it looks like. This is what it means. We don't know what it means. Yeah, it's a really strange concept. You know, it's like you've got someone like Kanye West who was like, I'm going to be a billionaire, and then I've made it. And then they pull the rug from underneath him. He's no longer a billionaire. It's like, well, what happens then? You know, it's like, so having cancer, having a really great family, who literally rallied round me. You know, it's like, I have to say this, it sounds crude, but it's not. It's a fact of life. I realized that farting is an essential part of our lives. Right? If you cannot fart, you will die.
Yeah.
It's a fact of life.
Fact.
It's an absolute fact of life, right? When you know, the first thing they say to you when you've had your operation is, have you passed wind?
Yeah.
And I used to be coy about that. I'd be like, nah, tell me about passing wind, that's my business. Yeah, but you realise that the doctors, I remember Dr. Sam, the one who I met, you know, in the beginning, he was like, no, you've got to. It's like, you've got to, otherwise that wind travels round your body and it could, you know.
It's fatal, isn't it?
It could be fatal,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I remember being rolled up in my, on my living room floor. My dad was there, my sisters were there. And my dad tapping my back like a little baby for about 8 hours. Yeah. And he wouldn't let anybody else do it. Oh. Yeah, just tapping my back, waiting for the fart to come out.
I love it. Taking you back to when you was a child.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Winding a child, right?
And it was funny because I saw what my illness was doing to my illness was making him ill. My dad's in his 80s now, and he looks really good. Yeah. He's got less grey hair than me, right? But it was actually making him ill. So I knew that, you know, not just for him, but I knew that I had to get better for him to be better. Yeah.
Seems to be the common theme, actually, as I've been talking to guests, is that inspiration for getting better. Having others to live for is a huge thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I had my diagnosis, I remember Dr. Bell saying to me, "Look, the treatment is going to be very invasive. So, you know, you're a young man. Are you going to have more children?" I was like, "Nah, I'm good. I have no more kids."
Yeah.
And then probably about a year later, Natalie looking at me going, "We should have had a child together."
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that's going to be my one regret.
Yeah.
And so we're in LA, and I'm finishing They've Got to Have Us, and I tell Natalie, get on a plane. So we put her on a plane, she comes over, and we spend was it 8-10 days in LA, visiting friends, going to parties, enjoying life. And on the last day, we've got a lunch meeting with one of our friends, and then we've got to go to the airport. So in the morning, she's gone, do you know what? You've packed the days out, right? So this morning, I'm going down to the pool and I'm going to sunbathe.
Yeah.
Cool. She goes down. Then she phones me. She's like, I've come up in hives. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I've come up in hives. My legs are swollen. Don't know what's going on. She comes upstairs, put her in the shower. We hose her down with cold water. We have lunch. And she's like, I'm really not feeling well. All the way home, 12-hour flight. She's like,
so
I'm not feeling, like, I don't know what's going on. 2 days later, she goes to the doctor. They send her to the hospital, and she's pregnant. So basically, Lala, as we call our daughter, because she was conceived in LA, she's our miracle baby, because basically they told us that we couldn't have children. Yeah. And God knows what happened.
Yeah, but look at that though.
So, but I tell you that story because for me, I was like, I can't leave now. Like, there was lots of, I mean, it's like, I love all my kids. Yeah. Yeah. I have 5 children. I love them all. You know, it's like, I just couldn't leave them.
But also as well, I feel like one of the things I'm seeing a lot is the power of the mind. And there's a lot about, I think, about your journey that you may have been told certain things, that this is what it is and you can't have kids and all of that. But there is that kind of rebellious spirit in you where you've not accepted that and you've gone, actually, I think that there's more to this. Or in a sense, like, you've not allowed it to kind of govern your journey with those limits, you know? So I feel like that's like such an amazing story of hope for so many.
I don't think that I have any control over that. Yeah, it's not like, I know I can be stubborn. Like, I'm stubborn with my work. Yeah, I'm stubborn with work where I'm like, look, this is my idea. This is how it's going to go. This is my vision. This is how we're going to make this work. Yeah, because, you know, when I've not been stubborn with work, yeah, it hasn't worked out that way. Yeah, and everything that I've made where I've been stubborn about still continues today. But the, you know, wanting to live or conceiving a child while having treatment for cancer, I had no control over that. I can't sit here and go, do you know what? It was like my obstinance meant that. Yeah. You know, it's like I was controlling fate. You know, it's like, no, that's godlike. I'm nowhere near God. You know, so no, I had no control over that. But then, you know, it's like I said, the ancestors have their plans.
And I think hope and faith are 2 huge things as well, and how you view it. I remember when I first started chemo, and he said, the oncologist, an amazing man, Grant, that's his name. I was trying to remember his name, Grant. And he turned around and he goes, do you know what, Leanne? He hadn't known that I'd been up all night the night before, absolutely shitting myself, crying all night. I had to sleep. My younger sister had to sleep with me, rubbing my back, shoulders, everything, going, it's going to be all right. And then I walked into the chemo ward and I, you know, took a few deep breaths, sat on the chair, and he goes, I'm going to tell you now, he said, you seem like a really positive person. I was reading your notes. You seem like a really positive person. And he said, I'm telling you now, that's 90% of the journey. And he goes, take it from an old man. This is 90% of the journey is your mind. And from when he said that, I dug in the toolbox and I was like, right, you know, I am a positive person. You know, my whole life has been governed on being positive, motivated and determined to succeed in every part of life. And I saw how much the mind really dictated the journey, and I've seen it so much. So I do think, although you say you're not in control, you naturally building from everything you've been through, work-wise, everything-wise, it's I think when you're diagnosed with something like cancer, it could be any sort of traumatic experience. Taking from the toolbox is so important. I think it's a thing that a lot of people don't talk about. I talk about it a lot with the women now. Like, I'm like, yeah, you dug in that toolbox from past experiences to get through it. And it's like, well, I never really thought of it like that. And I'm like, you did, because I see the contrast in journeys when people lose hope. And that's okay, right? Because you can feel like that because it's a tough thing.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned digging from the toolbox, because you just reminded me about something, actually. People say to me, was it faith? Was it religion that got you through it? Was it God? Yeah. And I say to them, it wasn't religion that got me through it, because I'm not religious. Okay. God has something to do with it, yeah, because I am spiritual, and I do believe in God. But I do believe in God gives you the power to deal with the things that you can deal with. Yeah. But I also believe that my training in sports,
100%. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Athletics. I did athletics at an elite level, and doing that training teaches you about your mind and your body and your spirit. Yeah, because, and it is mind, body, spirit. You have to have the spirit of belief, right? You have to believe in what you're doing. You have to train your body to do it. And basically, once you've done all of that, the mind allows you to go forward, because that's what gives you your confidence.
Absolutely.
But there are times when, because I remember back in the day, I used to train in my coach was the late Ron Rodden, brilliant, amazing coach, who coached Linford Christie to Olympic, gold medals, world championships, all of this. And, my squad of athletes, they were my family. They still are my family. Yeah, we've been through a lot together. But you turn up, and I remember one time Linford saying to me, give up your job, do athletics full time. And I was like, no, I'm going to do my job as well. I remember leaving work thinking, I'm knackered. Go to a cold track and run around it. It's like in the middle of winter. But you get there, you do your training, you get home in the evening, you're like, wow, I thought I was tired.
Yeah, no.
But I just did that amazing session. Yeah, so the mind overcoming and learning how to overcome. Yeah, doing things that allow you to train your mind. And athletics, doing sports, did that for me. I think if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't been through that, I often think, would I have gotten through this?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I think you can say that for quite a few things that you've had to experience. Even you were talking about the photography with all the agents and some of the rejection you may have had to go through there, and the moving, and it's just incredible.
No, it's a really good point you make, and I think because we're being so open, I think that it's like, if I can, I don't want to just come here and witter on. I want to leave people with something as well. And it's like the one thing that becoming a photographer, right? It's like I've never taken a photography lesson in my life. I've never been to film school. I've not done any of that. And most of my crew always laugh about that, because they've all been to film school and they're like, we work for this guy that never went to film school. It's always something that they laugh about. But I think that's just testimony to there's one thing that I think that people don't tell people, and I'm going to tell you that now.
Yeah.
And that's about self-belief. Yeah. Now, I remember when I wanted to become a photographer and putting together my portfolio, I could have been one of those people that go on, you know, Britain's Got Talent or something like that, and my family tells me that I can sing, but I can't sing a note to save my life. I'm tone deaf, yeah. I hope that if I didn't have talent, my family would be honest with me to tell me. But I could have been delusional. I believed in myself so much. I believed that one day that I could be world class at this thing. So I think the thing here is that there are so many people that don't tell people, you know, people go, I want to do this, or I want to do that. And people look at them and go, that's not possible. People like you don't get to do that. Well, what I say to those people is, don't listen to that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to do it, you have a dream to do something. Yeah, we only have a short time on this planet. Yeah, don't waste time.
It's not a dress rehearsal.
It's not a dress
That's
rehearsal.
one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, this isn't a dress rehearsal, so go and grab what you want.
Don't waste time. We don't have time to waste. Don't waste time.
Yeah, we could be here for hours more, Simon. I mean, there's some really interesting things I know.
I think the next time what you need to do is just put some food.
Yeah, put some food out. Yeah, we can have.
And just
I
eat
love that.
And talk. Yeah,
and we
that's
could do it in your studio.
Absolutely.
We'll do it in your studio.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, I've got 2 more questions. I mean, like I said, I had all these questions to ask, and I've only got through only a few because we went off so many times on different things. But like, I've just seen on your Instagram some of your most amazing work that you are synonymous with in so many people's eyes is about to be released on Netflix on the 1st of December. Can you tell everybody about both of those things?
Yeah. Big smile on my face.
Big smile on my face. I'm just like, ah! I'm so excited.
Yeah. So Black is the New Black, which was my first ever TV show on BBC Two. It's the gift that keeps on giving, as I call it. It's aged well, like a fine wine.
Yeah.
Still feels relevant today.
Very.
Netflix decided that they wanted to acquire it. So it's going on Netflix UK on the 1st of December.
Incredible.
And they're also taking The Outsiders, which I originally made for YouTube Originals, which is still on YouTube, still available on YouTube for people to watch worldwide.
Yeah.
But Netflix decided that they wanted that as well. So that's great.
Incredible stuff, man. It's such an honor to have you here. Like, how does that feel? Like,
I'll tell you how it feels. It feels like vindication.
Yeah.
Because when I first made Black is New Black in 2016.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it distributed.
Yeah.
No distributor would take it.
Yeah.
Because they kept saying that there was far too much black talent in it.
Of course.
Yeah. Far too much black talent to make it a viable option for worldwide release. That's the phrase that they use. Yeah. So to see, you know, from 2016, we're now in 2023, that a brand like Netflix is taking it. Yeah, it's real vindication of the power and the continued relevance of this show.
It's incredible.
But yeah, it's so I've had They've Got to Have Us have just come off Netflix, so we're waiting for it to do its cycle and go back somewhere else.
Yeah.
So to be a filmmaker, to have had 3 films on Netflix, I'm like...
Huge achievement, yeah. It's a huge achievement. You must feel so good.
I feel great, but you know what I feel great about is I've always been able to cast really well. So I remember for Black is the New Black, you know, people not knowing, you know, who Edward Ennifold was.
Yeah.
Why have you got this guy in your show?
Can you
I'm
imagine?
like, you have no idea who this guy is.
You have no idea, yeah.
And then a few months later, he became the editor of Vogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so things like that. But then, you know, in The Outsiders, which I made as a kind of like my love letter to Gen Zs and their amazing ability to create things and show us how to do things in new ways that we've never seen before. You know, it's like a lot of the people I had in that, like Ncuti Gatwa, who's now Doctor Who.
Exactly.
And we get to hear his story about how, you know, he was homeless, you know, for a while, you know, living on the streets and sleeping on people's sofas where he could. And look at his career today, and he tells us his own story within that show. So I'm really happy that the show gets to, they're beautiful shows. I'm really happy that they're going to get an airing on Netflix. But what I'm really happy about is all of the people in those shows get to, you know, new audiences get to meet those people, people that they already know, but they get to meet the real people, you know, behind those people that they know.
Because I noticed that about the cast on both of those. There are some people in there that people may have not known at the time, and they've become huge. So you're right about that. It's genius how you've casted for that, with people that, you know, who have. In my head, I had a look and I was a bit like, how did you know that person was going to be big? And that guy was the first one I saw. And I was like, mate, he's Doctor Who now. Like, he's doing so much stuff. What was he in, the Barbie movie? And everything?
Yeah, I mean...
Leanne Pinnock, look how big she is now in her solo world. There was... Oh, you had everybody on there. Jill Scott. Who else was on there? Who else is in there? You have everyone.
Miguel.
Yeah. I'm so excited for you, Simon, and it's so well deserved. So Simon worked with us on the amazing production that we did earlier this year, Unseen, Unheard. And although we ain't got time to get in that, that's another podcast. We've got a part 2 of this going to come, right? Because we have to talk about that. But we saw you, you know, pull that together with the help of obviously the wonderful Suzanne. But again, that was me coming to you and saying, look, help us out, because this is what we're trying to put together. And that was an opportunity for you to delve back into the cancer world and kind of do your bit. You'd already done your bit. You don't owe anybody anything, but it was a wonderful opportunity for you to come in and inspire the cancer community. And my last question for you is, you know, it's a bit around Unseen Unheard, because I've spoken to you about why you done it, and I know how proud you were of the Unseen Unheard production. But what would you like your impact to be in the cancer world?
They've been asked that before. I don't expect to have an impact in anything that I do. I suppose for me, doing the work that I do, I understand the power of storytelling. You know, I kick and I shove and I shout in rooms where people say to me, you know, it's like, I'm not sure if this story is going to be relevant for our network or our audience. And I'm like, stop talking so much shit. Because I remember hearing, I've actually put this as a mantra in my company for why I call my company The Atelier, and what it stands for. And what I heard was, there was this documentary that I watched, and there was this old African man, and I say an old African man because I can't remember what part of Africa he was from, but he was elderly. So elderly that he looked like Father Time itself. Really wise old man. And he was a griot, a storyteller. And he turned around and he said, never forget this, he said that it doesn't make sense to him that one culture's story becomes the stories of every culture. And I was like, no, that's why I do what I do. You know, that's why I set up The Atelier. To make sure that people understand that there are other types of stories that need to be told that are equally as important, if not more important, because they come from the original source of storytelling. So for me, I think that what we did with Unseen Unheard, I think I think what we started with Unseen Unheard, because it's just opened the door.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have to go in the door now. Yeah, and then cause some trouble.
Yes.
Right. But what we did with Unseen Unheard was we managed to put a play together to the standard of a West End production, yeah, with professional actresses and lighting and sound and team and everything in a professional theatre. And we had sold out audiences every night, laughing, crying and thinking with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then having that Q&A afterwards where we could share knowledge, yeah, was brilliant. And, you know, if we can continue to bring stories like that to communities, and what I loved about it, when I say communities, I don't just mean to the cancer community, because I mean the piece that we had in The Guardian, the stuff that we had on ITV News and things like that, meant that this wasn't just a cancer story. Yeah, it became a cultural story.
It's a cultural, yeah.
Yeah, and
I agree.
you know, people were like, right, okay. And if I can continue doing that as an artist, where however I want to tell my story, or however I want to tell other people's stories, because that's what I do. I tell other people's stories, or I create the means by which other people can tell their stories, whether that's in an exhibition of photography, whether it's in a documentary or a feature film, or it's in a play. Yeah, it's like I'm happy that the ancestors have created that path for me, where people don't say, no, you can't do that. They go, okay, let's see what you're going to do next.
And I think that you've done that amazingly well, because that's exactly what I would say to you. Your impact is storytelling, and I think that's what you do, and I think that's what you do amazingly well. And I think multiple people would say that about you. Simon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's an honour. I have lots of conversations with you, and every time I leave with gems all the time. I don't think I've processed yet that I've taken away from this conversation. There's many. I'll come back to you tomorrow and I'll touch base and say, look, these are the things, because you always leave people so inspired. Thank you for just sharing. Thank you for giving your time. You are one of the busiest men I know. You're hardly ever around or here, but you always make time for people. And I just want to say thank you so much, because you've opened doors even for us and for Black Women Rising, where many were closed before. And I don't think I've told you that enough, but we thank you and we think you're amazing.
No,
so,
we thank you.
Listen.
The feeling's mutual.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, I've got 2 more things to do.
Okay.
So firstly, I'm doing this with everybody. Pick one of my cards. These are 2 packs of my favourite cards.
Okay.
One is an affirmation, and one is a statement / piece of advice.
Okay.
They're all shuffled and shaped already, so you're just going to pick the top one.
All right.
What do you want?
The colourful one is but I'm going to go for the other one instead.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Right, I need to put my glasses on for this. Where did I put them?
Do you know what's so funny? I gave a card to someone as well last week, and they were like, I can't hardly read this.
Yeah, I can't. I left my glasses in the
This
coat.
is what it says. It says, my imperfections make me unique.
Yeah. Damn right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally believe that. You know, the other thing that I believe, because, and I know we're over time, but I have to leave you with this one, yeah? Everything that I do as a storyteller is based on the first thing that I started to do was make portraits of people.
Yeah.
I'm a portrait maker.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you make somebody's portrait, basically it's like you make their picture, and then you allow that picture, when it's up on a wall or it's in a book, other people then, it allows other people then to meet your story.
Exactly. I agree.
They meet you. Yeah. But the unique thing about being a portrait maker is that you find beauty in everybody. Everybody's own uniqueness.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody in this room is uniquely beautiful, right? And I've always, it's a thing of mine, is having somebody walk in and go, I take awful pictures. And then you show them their picture and they go, oh my God, is that me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, yeah. I love that you said that as well, because that's how Black Women Rising started. It was portraits. And so the exhibition was called Black Women Rising, Untold Cancer Stories. Yeah. And that's where we are here, why we're here today, because that project went viral and then, you know, all this other stuff happened. So I love that you said that.
Okay.
Synergy. Right, where is the other thing I'm giving you? Someone took it? No? Oops. Oh, yes, please. Well, you couldn't come to a Palmer's sponsored podcast without getting a Palmer's sponsored bag.
Yeah.
That's for you, darling.
Well, it's not for me, it's for my wife.
Okay.
But yeah, on behalf of Natalie, thank you.
You are more than welcome.
Okay.
So we just want to say a massive thank you to Simon once again. Thank you for watching this episode, and we'll be back next week with another one. Thank you.